She clearly prefers a simple and sincere man, yet her mother insists that she marry the wealthy young heir of the town. Left with no choice, she deliberately dressed plainly for the meeting, hoping to just go through the motions. But the young gentleman unexpectedly developed feelings for Jane and even wanted to sign an engagement agreement with her on the spot. But Jane did not feel the slightest spark toward him, and instead felt repelled by his self-assured attitude. Even though his family was the most distinguished in the town, she still did not want to spend her youth living in quiet compromise. On the way home, her head throbbed with worry as she struggled to figure out how to refuse him. Yet before she could make up her mind, the young gentleman arrived with countless betrothal gifts to formally propose. Holding her hand, he poured out his affection and promises for the future, but Jane still gently declined his proposal. Although he was outstanding in every aspect, she simply wanted to find the kind of love she had always dreamed of. Before leaving, the young gentleman told Jane that sometimes love is like a shy flower that must be tested by reality and wealth before it can bloom brilliantly. However, Jane firmly believed that true love cannot be measured by money, and that genuine affection comes from deep emotional connection. Yet her independent choice brought sharp criticism from her mother, who did not want Jane to repeat her own difficult path of pursuing love, because the endless exhaustion and worry were truly unbearable.
I will not marry without affection, like my mother. And now I have to dig my own damn potatoes!
Her mother's words were like a sharp axe, cutting off Jane's romantic fantasies. And when ideal love collides with the need for daily sustenance, the choices of the poor are painfully limited.
Affection is desirable. Money is absolutely indispensable.
Her mother's words left Jane deeply troubled, and it was not until her ever-encouraging father came to her side that she found a bit of calm. Yet she never expected him to say that this was the best opportunity she would ever encounter, and that a comfortable life and a worry-free family would make her forget her pain. Her father had struggled his entire life without escaping poverty, and he had come to understand that some people are born already standing at the finish line. Her mother's reproach and her father's persuasion struck Jane's heart like a raging storm, and just as she was about to accept the young gentleman's proposal, fate took an unexpected turn when a penniless young man suddenly entered her life. He had no interest at all in the poetry Jane cherished most, and would even fall sound asleep while she recited with passion, showing no restraint. And after the recitation ended, he openly mocked her poems as overly affected.
But a metropolitan mind may be less susceptible to extended juvenile self-regard.
Jane was left stunned, and in a burst of anger she ran to her bedroom and tore her proudest poems into shreds, while etching the image of this rude man firmly into her memory. Tom had once been a promising intern lawyer, and with the support of his uncle, a respected judge, he should have made his mark in the legal world. Yet young and reckless, he could not endure a dull and disciplined life, spending his days indulging with idle companions and losing himself in fleeting pleasures. His uncle saw all of this clearly and directly sent him to the countryside to experience real life. That evening, Jane arrived in town for a banquet, only to find that the young gentleman had been waiting there for a long time, and with visible nervousness he invited her to dance. And although Jane was unwilling, she accepted to spare him embarrassment. But Weasley's stiff movements made Jane deeply uncomfortable, and though the steps were simple, he repeatedly stepped on her feet, leaving her quietly suffering. This scene happened to be witnessed by Tom from the second floor, and seeing Jane's restrained frustration and forced composure, he unconsciously smiled. A smile Jane noticed, prompting her to vent her pent-up irritation on the mocking Tom, further convincing her that he was an exasperating man. Yet Tom approached Jane and took the initiative to invite her to dance, hoping to get to know her. However, tension had already formed between them, as Tom mocked Jane for being arrogant, while Jane struck back at Tom's impulsive and rough nature, one proud and the other biased, causing the atmosphere between them to grow increasingly charged. After the dance ended, Jane was still filled with anger, and she wrote down all of Tom's flaws, trying to vent the dissatisfaction in her heart through words. But this alone could not satisfy her. During a baseball game, Jane witnessed Tom's agile and skillful play as he easily defeated many opponents in the town, leaving them with no chance to respond. And seeing his triumphant smile, a spark of defiance rose within her, leading her to step forward herself, determined to teach Tom a lesson. But Tom did not take Jane's challenge seriously, casually tossing the ball and laughing at her confidence. Yet Jane was not shaken by his dismissal, striking the ball cleanly, and this brilliant hit stunned the entire crowd, allowing Jane to restore the town's pride and leaving the once mocking Tom genuinely impressed, prompting him to set aside his arrogance and truly notice this extraordinary girl. The next day, Jane went to the library to borrow books and unexpectedly spotted Tom crouched quietly in a corner downstairs, and in a fluster she tried to leave without engaging him, but the creaking of the stairs had already alerted Tom to her presence. He spoke frankly, telling Jane that literature comes from life, and that only by experiencing the joys and sorrows of love can one truly create timeless works that move the heart. Jane, half understanding, asked him for advice, and Tom told her that only truly great books could give her the answers she sought.
Young woman with the soft corrupt.
Read this. And you will understand.
When Jane opened the book Tom recommended, it felt as though she had opened a door to another world, where the content was bold and unconventional, filled with challenges to traditional ideas, and those daring passages sent a rush through Jane's heart, quickening her pulse and flushing her cheeks. The following day, Jane sought out Tom to discuss her questions about the book, and after a deep exchange, Tom's knowledge and unique insights earned her genuine admiration, while Jane's sharp intelligence also made Tom see her in a new light. Through the clash of ideas, they inspired one another, and without realizing it, the distance between them quietly closed. As the afternoon light faded and night fell, they stepped together into an underground boxing venue, where they witnessed a seasoned fighter overwhelming a newcomer. And despite the newcomer's obvious distress, the bout showed no sign of stopping. The sight ignited Tom's sense of justice, and he decided to step forward to stand up for the newcomer. Yet before he could steady himself, he was swiftly knocked to the ground. Watching his disheveled state, Jane finally saw the real Tom, and realized that arrogance was not who he truly was, but rather sincerity and courage defined him.
Forgive me if I suspect in your sense of justice.
Books not only broadened Jane's horizons, but also gave her the courage to face the world head-on, and her mother's renewed pressure to marry awakened Jane's determination to break free from traditional constraints, because in that era, British men dominated society, holding power and resources, while women were treated as dependents whose lives relied entirely on men. And under such social conditions, marriage became the only path for women to survive, leaving them with no real alternatives even if they were unwilling. Yet in the face of pressure from both society and family, Jane did not want to give in so easily, and longed to find someone she could truly love. But one day, while chatting with her sister, Jane unexpectedly learned that Tom would soon return to London, and the news left her momentarily dazed, perhaps surprised by his sudden departure, or perhaps because without realizing it, Tom had already entered her heart, and this feeling quietly took root within her like a tender sprout in early spring. It was not until she attended Weasley's aunt's gathering that Jane realized she was unconsciously searching for Tom's presence, scanning the hall and the upper floor again and again, yet never finding him. And in that moment, a wave of loss and melancholy welled up inside her, as if she was not yet ready to let Tom leave. When the dance began, Jane had no choice but to force a smile and dance with Weasley, yet the romantic music and intimate atmosphere made her feel suffocated, and although this should have been her favorite moment, without the one she loved, Jane could never fully immerse herself. Yet just as her thoughts drifted, with a simple turn, Tom appeared beside her, and the slight smile at the corner of his lips became a moment Jane would never forget, as her earlier sadness was instantly replaced by joy, making the entire world seem to brighten. During the dance, they did not exchange a single word, but with every shared glance, they saw the love reflected in each other's eyes, and their subtle yet unmistakable affection was fully noticed by Weasley's aunt. As Weasley's elder, she already harbored resentment toward Jane for refusing Weasley's proposal, and witnessing this scene only fueled her anger, so she sought out Jane under the guise of a private talk. Yet every word she spoke was laced with mockery and sarcasm.
When a young woman such as yourself receives the addresses from a gentleman such as my nephew, it is her duty to accept at once. But what do we find?
Weasley's aunt's words were like a bucket of cold water, extinguishing the spark of hope in Jane's heart, and she realized that she seemed destined to face the harshness of reality, torn between an uncertain love and a life of comfort and security, leaving her trapped in confusion and hesitation. When Tom finally approached Jane, he spoke with a mix of sadness and anger, offering her a strained congratulations, as if he had already heard from rumors that she was about to accept the proposal. He had believed Jane was different from everyone else, yet never expected that she too would choose to marry someone she did not love. Faced with Tom's questioning, Jane asked in return what loving someone would change, especially when he was leaving the very next day. Only then did Tom realize that Jane had already fallen in love with him, and when Jane saw the tears shimmering in his eyes, she understood his reluctance to part. Slowly leaning in to kiss him, while Tom responded without hesitation, and on that romantic night, they pledged their lives to each other, deciding to walk together forever. At dawn, they chose to give their love a clear answer, hoping to make it stronger, and Jane followed Tom to London to meet his uncle, seeking his approval for their marriage. To make this happen, Tom deliberately lied to his uncle, claiming that Jane came from a noble background, and that the income from her writing alone was enough to support months of living expenses. And hearing this, his uncle found no reason to oppose them, but the very next day, an anonymous letter shattered their love, exposing Jane's humble origins in full, clearly intended to destroy her marriage with Tom, and the letter succeeded, tearing their relationship apart. The uncle decisively withdrew his approval of Tom and Jane's marriage, firmly refusing to allow Tom to marry a country girl, as the family's history and traditions would never accept Jane's presence. Tom tried to persuade his uncle to truly understand what made Jane special, but his uncle warned him that if he married Jane, he would lose his right to inherit the family fortune. Jane was willing to give up everything for love, even if it meant living in hardship, but Tom could not bear to lose his uncle's wealth, even at the cost of losing the woman he loved.
Depend entirely upon.
I depend on you.
To my family, Jane. I must think of them as well as...
The love Jane had once believed in burst like a fragile bubble, and she never imagined that the man who had encouraged her to believe in true love would, at the critical moment, become someone who turned away. Jane's first brave attempt to fight for love became a wound that would forever remain unhealed in her heart. After the breakup, Tom still could not forget every moment he shared with Jane, and he could only numb himself with alcohol, trying to erase her from his mind. Yet he knew this was merely an escape from the fear behind his original choice. Reason and emotion were constantly at war within him, leaving him in pain and inner struggle. But he also understood that once a choice is made, the consequences must be borne. When Jane later heard the news of Tom's engagement, it felt as if her heart had been cut open, and she finally understood the choice Tom had made. While the light that once illuminated her life slowly faded from her world, yet sorrow brought Jane not only heartbreak and pain, but also an endless source of creative strength. As she began writing day and night, turning the love in her heart into words flowing from her pen, her work Pride and Prejudice became a masterpiece cherished by countless readers, where the heroine Elizabeth finds both love and fortune, while Jane's own life was filled with pain and heartbreak. As Jane sank into boundless sorrow, Weasley continued to pursue her persistently, and this time Jane did not refuse him. Yet Tom's sudden reappearance once again shattered her world. Jane could not understand why he had returned, nor how he could have the heart to abandon her, until Tom once again revealed his true feelings, and her heart was persuaded all over again. Seeing Jane unable to meet his gaze, Tom understood that she still held him in her heart.
What value will there be in life if we are not together? Run away with me. That is exactly what I propose.
This bold decision made happiness seem within reach for Jane, and they chose to challenge convention and an unchangeable fate through their actions. Accompanied by the first light of dawn, they threw themselves fearlessly into the embrace of love, as if only by wandering far away could they ensure they would never be separated. This was the most thrilling moment of their lives, as the carriage carried their boundless hopes for a happy future, like a mysterious key opening an entirely new life. Yet they had no idea that reality would prove far harsher than they imagined. When the carriage became stuck in the mud, they were forced to get down, and Tom removed his coat to help push alongside others, never realizing that the family letter he dropped was picked up by Jane. Jane did not want to read it, but thinking that she was about to entrust her life to him, she felt compelled to know his secret. And it was this very letter that made her lose the courage to hold on to Tom. It turned out that Tom's family's circumstances were also extremely difficult, and beneath his carefree image, he asked his uncle for money while secretly sending it all home to support his parents. If he could no longer send money in the future, even the basic needs of his 5 younger brothers would be in jeopardy. After reading the letter, Jane once again fell into painful conflict, unable to claim Tom for herself while placing his family in uncertainty. Yet knowing that letting him go would also mean losing love, reason and reality made Jane understand that she had to let go, not because family forced her hand, but because she did not want love to drive either family into hardship, where affection might eventually fade into nothing but exhaustion.
But if our love destroys your family, it will destroy itself. Yes. Or else I shall count it as false, which you've had no love at all.
After explaining everything, Jane left Tom, and though she longed to spend her life with him, reality forced her to walk away. While Tom was once again crushed by reality, he wanted to chase after Jane, yet his feet felt rooted to the ground. unable to move, as if they were destined never to be together, and destined to become each other's lifelong regret. The warm breeze of early autumn gently brushed Jane's face, offering comfort and inspiring a bold decision within her heart. As she rejected every proposal and took the initiative to meet Weasley to explain everything clearly. You are the most ideal marriage partner in the dreams of many, but in the face of love, I do not want to betray my true nature, nor allow a loveless marriage to become a prison for two people. From that moment on, Jane chose a life of solitude, refusing to bow to reality and never betraying who she was because of poverty or loneliness. A failed love left her alone, yet it also allowed her talent to shine through literature. And in an era when women were expected to rely solely on men, Jane used writing as her weapon and her shield. When Jane's hair had turned gray at the temples, she still remained true to herself, living alone, and though time had taken her youth, her eyes and expressions still carried elegance and grace. By then, Jane had become a celebrated writer throughout London, and wherever she went, people shared with her the insights and inspiration they found in her books. On one ordinary day, Jane caught sight of a familiar figure, and her heart raced as if time had reversed, returning her to a moment from long ago. When they finally stood before each other again, Tom had become a renowned judge in London, and Jane felt that he had achieved success, yet also felt that he had gained nothing at all. As Jane read her own book aloud before the crowd, she felt as though she were inside a dream filled with memories, recounting her story with Tom, a love like a storm that carried passion and conflict, as well as pain and growth. The setting was the same, yet they had both changed, and Tom no longer slept peacefully, but was filled with nostalgia and regret. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips, yet it was tinged with deep sadness, and all he could do was applaud. Feeling proud of Jane's achievements, Jane noticed the wedding ring on Tom's finger, then slowly looked at her own empty hands, understanding that Tom had become her regret, while knowing that their memories would forever remain in each other's hearts. Perhaps this is fate's irony, for sometimes we cannot control our lives or choose our love, and can only keep moving forward under destiny's arrangement. Love is like a gamble, where you invest all your feelings and time without knowing the outcome, and whether you win or lose completely, you must still remain true to who you are. May you find the one your heart loves, and the path your heart longs for.